All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. We're still having some people join right now, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So we had some fun this week with the Zoom calls that we had going on. In just a minute, I'm gonna, not Zoom calls, but the Facebook rooms that you guys did for the challenge. Right after we pray, I'm gonna have a couple guys hop on and just give us a recap, a highlight of how their call went. Carlos Cardona, would you mind praying for us? Really putting you
Sure,
on the spot here.
definitely.
Okay.
Yep. Father in heaven, I thank you for your goodness. I thank you for your blessings. And I pray that you'd be with us now as we come together to share ideas about how to um, further our ministry and build the kingdom. I pray that you bless us now. And I pray these things in your name. Amen.
All right. Thomas, do you want to give us a recap of your call?
You're talking about me personally?
Yeah, so we had
Sorry.
a bunch of us on here, so it was a lot of fun. We talked ministry, we talked life, and like I said yesterday on our chat, like I haven't laughed that hard in a long time, and it was good just to have people that are doing what you're doing and able to just connect on that personal level that a lot of times I don't get here in person anyway. I don't have a lot of pastors in my area that I can connect with personally. But to have these guys that, hey, they know what I'm going through, and we can spend that time just encouraging and strengthening each other, and just the friendship and the camaraderie, it was fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah, we had, go ahead. I'm sorry, Kylie.
No. I just said awesome. I love it. Go ahead.
Yeah, the encouraging and camaraderie is probably the two words that I would use to describe ours. Luke, I was in with Luke, I think in almost every single room that I was in, and he started most of them, I think, but it was really good just to see people face to face. It's a little bit different than over the phone. And so just be able to connect with people on a very personal level, see a few people of them with their kids in the background, and just remember that we are all just human. It became human to human interaction rather than just a pastor to a pastor. And so it was definitely friend to friend. And so that level of friendship was definitely great. Definitely laughing with Thomas the other day, making fun of him as usual. But then also the other highlights of connecting with people from the other side of the world there in Australia, and then Jay Ballou. And it was good. It was good to reach out to those guys and to have them be a blessing to us, and then us be a blessing to them as well. So.
That's awesome. I'm always encouraged to hear when people get together. I think, we are made to share our lives and to share our burdens, bear each other's burdens. And we can't do that if we're not connecting with those around us. And like you guys mentioned, there's no one that understands the pastoral role or the ministry leader role more than other ministry leaders. And so for you guys to connect, I think it's really valuable. We all need that encouragement in our life. And to find someone that can be like, yes, you get it, right? That's just so encouraging. So I'm really glad you guys were able to do that. If you weren't able to hop on to one of those calls this week, I really would just encourage you to still do that. You don't have to have a challenge to connect with other people. You can still do that throughout the week, or get each other's numbers and connect on a regular basis, hopefully. I was actually just talking to some pastors who both signed up for Idea Night, and they have never met each other. And so they're actually going to do that pretty soon. I'm really excited to hear that, because they're not too far from each other, but they've never connected. And so now they're kind of in the same area. They've got a ton in common, and they're going to get together for coffee soon, which is fantastic. So just remember, you don't have to have an Idea Network challenge to connect with the people in this group. So today we have a very good friend of mine and a very encouragement in my life, Charity Berkey. Just so you know, everyone, the Joshes, Josh Tice, Josh Ermler, they are on the Mastermind retreat right now, which is as kind of a sidearm of Idea Network. If you haven't had a chance to go to one, or if you haven't even heard of it, you can look it up on our website as well. But it's a 3-day intensive retreat followed by a 90-day accountability group with the people who are in your group. And they talk about one big idea to change and impact your ministry. And everyone who's, I think there's a few guys in this roundtable actually who have been to one before, but it's a very intensive group and a focus group, if you will. And they always come away and talk about how they were able to implement that idea within their church that year through the 90 days and then following, and how it impacted them. So that's where they're at today. So they're not able to be at the roundtable, but it's an awesome event, and I'm sure you'll see more about it next week after they're finished and wrapped up and posting about it. So Charity Berkey is here, and she has been working in nursery ministry for, I think you said 20 years, 3 years leading it as the official head. But as many of you know, us ladies tend to work in it, even if we don't work in it. So she's got a lot of different perspectives on nursery ministry, from just being a volunteer to now being the head leader of that ministry for the last 3 years. So she's gonna share with us how to make our nursery ministries better. So Charity, it's all yours.
All right, so the first big thing that I'd like to talk about is appreciation. No other ministry at the church has you physically dealing with urine, feces, and throw up every single time you are serving. And on top of that, it can be the most criticized ministry of the entire church, because new mothers have a tendency to think they know how everything should run. And so you're dealing with the grossest things in the world. You deal with stuff like you're a nurse and you get no pay for what you're doing. It's all spiritual crowns in heaven, which is wonderful, but it's a very unappreciated ministry. Not only is appreciation needed for your volunteers, but for your nursery coordinator. So the person that's leading your nursery ministry, as well as obviously all your other ministries, but the person that's leading your nursery ministry can easily get bogged down, because it really is the lowest, it is the lowest on the totem pole. There's no appreciation. You don't get, there's no, hey, look, let's have her stand up and put her up on front. No one cares. But when do they care? They care when something bad happens in the ministry. I mean, I just watched a John Christ video that he put out yesterday, and it was mocking about how it was hilarious. And it's so sad because it was so true. He was talking to the children's ministry leader, and she said, oh, the pastor doesn't care, just as long as no one dies back here. That's when anybody notices anything back here. And when it's so sad that is often the case, that if we don't purposefully do something about it, that ministry leader will end up leaving, and then you won't have anybody, and then you're going to be doing all of it. So specifically for the nursery, how can you as the pastor show appreciation to the nursery coordinator? How can you as the nursery coordinator show appreciation to the volunteers? We try to do special things. We joke around in the nursery that, that I'm the lead bottom wiper here at Liberty Baptist Church. We have the lead pastor, you have, the music director. What am I? I'm the lead bottom wiper here at Liberty Baptist Church. And we even got t-shirts, me and the girls, just to make it fun and show appreciation. I got t-shirts for the ladies. They're hot pink with black sparkles and black baby diapers on the back that say, bottom wiper at Liberty Baptist Church. And it's just a big joke, but it's something showing, hey, look, you are appreciated. They love it. They wear those shirts with pride. It's hilarious. But how can you actually show? There's lots of different things that we personally do. We have anytime, because they get overworked. Those people get overworked during the times of, conferences or any kind of meeting that's going up. Who's going to be watching those kids? Now, a lot of times the lead pastor doesn't have to think about that, but they're in the back sitting for hours, and they come back the next night and the next night and the next night. One of the big things that we do that's really small really some of the smallest things that you do keep them going. So we do a favorites table that only they are allowed to go to. They lay out all their favorites of different things that they love, and they're able to go back and get their snacks of what, I mean, and they're whatever. They make a list of, you know, whatever chocolates, whatever beef jerky, whatever. And they really, I have had teachers who have worked at our church for years that were like, when we started doing that about 5 or 6 years ago, that said, you know, that really means so much to us. And all you have to do is do a Walmart click and pull thing. You know, you add it all in and you set it up, and they feel like, okay, I'm not just the person in the back that really is just the bottom wiper. That's all I am. That's all I'm here for. And no one really cares what I do. So Max Lucado says, when you stop loving people, you stop leading people. So if you don't really love these people, showing the love, showing the, you know, finding out their love language and pursuing them in love and showing them that, where you're going to stop caring about them, and you're not going to actually help them in their ministry roles. So showing them appreciation. The second big thing is training them. So often, this is what I get personally. I have had so many young, pregnant, new ministry wives. They might have 1 or 2 kids, and they're like, what do I do? They are so stressed out. They hate doing the nursery. They absolutely hate it. And normally it's because there was no training, zero training involved. When Heather Tice, they got a new nursery director. She called me up, set an appointment with me, took me out to lunch with her nursery director, and said, I want you to talk all nursery to her. Tell her everything that you do. That was her showing up. First of all, hey, look, I appreciate you enough that I'm willing to go and actually train you. So get them the training that they need. You might think, oh, what is it? Oh, what do you have to do to be a nursery director? You watch babies, you wipe bottoms, you do. There's so much involved because, like I said, new moms are extremely, extremely critical. Especially if it's their first or just their second kid and they're not used to having 4 or 5 kids, and you're like, they'll all live, don't worry about it. But a lot of times they're very uptight and tense, and that ministry, and you need that ministry. We closed nursery during COVID. My brother was so excited when we had nursery open back up. We had, there was a kid that the parent she was like 3 years old, so she would have been actually in the older classes, but the dad sitting on the front row holding the child up, and the child's arms are out, and they're making the like flying noises during church. And my brother just preached through it, and afterwards he's like, when can we open these back up? But it was his own rule that we weren't opening nurseries and childcares up yet because of the safety issue, you know? So we know how vitally important it is, but it often doesn't get recognized until there's something bad happening. So the appreciation, but then training. So how can you train? Always have an understanding so there is never a misunderstanding. Never assume. Don't assume that they know what to do. Don't assume that they know that they can go and that they have funding to go provide stuff for the nursery. Don't assume these things. Communicate with them. Make up a nursery guidelines. Don't assume that if you want them to have choose, you know, the toddler nursery, an actual Jesus class where you're telling them Bible stories and sing songs. If you want that, don't assume that they know that. Lay out the schedule for them. If you don't want that, if you just want it to be babysitting, you have to let them know what it is expected, and that the training must happen. So communication, often the only communication that really goes on between the nursery coordinator and the pastors is like, hey, once a month. I mean, how often, you know, like, does the pastor see the nursery coordinator? Oh, hey, you guys are doing a great job. We love you guys. You know, so there really is very little communication, because you think, why do I need to? But what's happening when you're a nursery director, every Sunday that children go home, they are happy, clean, and healthy, and the parents got to sit in church, That is a win. Every Sunday, every service that happens, that is a huge win. Yet, what happens in the form of communication, instead of celebrating wins with the nursery director, what does happen? This is what happens. The nursery director is exhausted. 12 people didn't show up today that were supposed to be there, and she has to be the one that does it all, right? Then she gets home, she's so tired after a long Sunday, and she goes and she lays down, she's looking at Facebook, whatever, and she sees Negative Nancy, who had her kids in nursery, and Negative Nancy decides to say, oh, my kid has hand, foot, and mouth. They got it from the nursery. Of course, because everybody and their dog wants to blame every sickness that happens on the church nursery. We don't want to at all regard the fact that Negative Nancy the day before went grocery shopping with her children, went to the park with her children the day before, and she posted all of this on social media. The day before, she went to her neighbor's house and had a play date with all of her children. We're not going to, think about that. So then what happens? What happens is senior pastor or lead pastor or overseer of the nursery coordinator, all he sees, because he doesn't communicate with the nursery director and seeing if things are going well, seeing if they need anything. Because of that, lead pastor sees on his social media, oh my goodness, our churches are disgusting. Our church nursery is disgusting. I better go talk to the nursery director. And then all nursery director gets is negative communication, hurtful. And then, so if you're not speaking life into that nursery director, you really haven't earned the right to speak negative criticism into that nursery director. I hope that's clear. Obviously, it's the nursery of the church and you have the right to come in and say whatever. But if all you're coming in saying, oh, this bad thing happened, I saw the person that doesn't ever serve say this, I don't, stand by those leaders. If there is little to no positive communication between the overseer and the nursery coordinator, the overseer has very little right to come in and pose helpful criticism. So create a desire. So we need to make sure we're training them. We need to make sure we're appreciating them. Creating a desirable venue. So what you should do as the nursery director, as the lead pastor, anybody that's over it should go into the room and ask themselves, would I want to be here if I didn't have to be here? Look at this room. This is disgusting. The carpet hasn't been changed out in 15 years. And this is the room that, once again, feces happens, urine happens, throw up happens. Okay, this is disgusting. Is this someplace I would personally want to stay when I'm going to church on Sunday? Is this where I would want to be? So we need to make the venue a desirable venue. And that does not just include making it a beautiful place. That doesn't include, like fundraising and making sure you're fully funded. That would include like what is spoken of when the nursery director speaks about the nursery. When she posts, if you are the nursery director, don't be posting all the hateful things about nursery. Oh, and you're not even saying hateful, but you're like sounding desperate, because no one wants to come and help you if you're desperate. If you're like, I was in nursery all day and no one showed up for help. Well, guess what? They're not going to come. That's not how you get help. You make it a desirable place to be. So not just in the beauty of it, but in the way you speak of it, in the way you appreciate them, the posts you put up of the nursery worker of the month, or you put up, or you get a t-shirt of the volunteer of the month, whatever it is. If you oversee the nursery, if you're over the nursery director, okay, it's so important. The communication aspect is so important. So for me, it's a little different. It's unique because my dad is the senior pastor, my brother is the executive pastor, and my dad is the associate, or my husband is the associate pastor. So I feel very comfortable communicating to all three of them, almost too comfortable, when I'm like, when we needed a facelift on our nursery, they said specifically, Matt was like, and it was one of Matt's ideas. He was like, I really do think we need to change up this nursery. So I'm like, okay, sounds good. So he said, in 2 months, you'll get the funding. So I come to him 2 months later and I'm like, all right, so when do we get to start doing the nursery? He's like, oh, that money went to the funding of the bathrooms. And I'm like, are you serious? You know, and I can talk to him about this. Most nursery directors, unless they're related to the overseer, the pastor, the lead pastor, associate pastor, whatever, they are not going to feel comfortable saying, okay, I'll come back next time. I'll come back next time. They're going to stop coming back, and then they're going to be stuck in their their nursery that's nasty, and then they'll eventually leave you, and then you're stuck. So for me, I was like, you know, hey. And I kept asking, and still we started doing other things to the church. So finally, this was after 4 months, after saying, oh yeah, we'll get to that funding. Like I said, most people aren't going to feel comfortable doing that. So I said, okay, you know what I'm going to do? We have prayer request cards that all the church staff pray for every single week collectively together. So I wrote, please pray that we finally get the funding for the church nursery that really needs funded, and we need that. So for 6 weeks straight, I put that in. And after 6 weeks, after the pastors and all the church staff collectively praying for the church nursery to get funded, I got funded. But most people aren't going to feel comfortable coming to you and saying that, or doing that, or being passive aggressive like I was. Please pray that this gets done like you promised me it would get done. Most people aren't going to feel comfortable because that's a rude thing to do. But when you're with family, you don't care. So making sure that they actually have training in the nursery, making sure that the venue is desirable, and making sure they are appreciated. In closing, with being sure that they are appreciated, they say that motivation and manipulation, that there's a fine line between those. But because ultimately we want people serving, right? Because they love Jesus, because they've been discipled and you've prayed for them to do this, and they serve out of a heart of love and giving, right? That's what the mature believer does do. And when the mature believer is not appreciated, they know to go to God. They know to do those things. They know the steps to take. But in a vibrant, growing, gospel-centered church, we are not filled with mature believers. And that's wonderful. We are filled with both. We have mature believers and we have brand new saved people. And if you start treating these brand new saved people as, okay, rear end wiper, that's what you do, and you push them off, they're going to be like, what is this? I'm not doing this garbage. And they're not going to want to help. So we have also, even though we all are serving the Lord because this is what God desires to do, we're leaders, this is what you do, even when you don't want to do it. We have all felt the demoralizing feeling of being used and unappreciated, haven't we? Doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're the lead pastor. It doesn't matter if you're the bottom of the totem pole, bottom wiper, okay? We know what it's like to feel unappreciated. So err on the side of, I'm going to motivate. I'm not trying to manipulate. Maybe people might think I'm manipulating. I don't care. I'm just going to show the appreciation. Like the Bible teaches us, that the laborer is worthy of his hire. And it might not be monetary, but it's showing they're worthy of being told that they have value. They're worthy of being shown they're appreciated. So we can do that. We can show those new believers that it's worth it. We can show them appreciation. We can do that by seeking out new ways to appreciate, train, and create desirable venue for our leaders to volunteer in. And it's quiet.
Sorry, I'm trying to find myself to highlight myself, and it's not working. Charity, do you want to share your questions?
Oh, sure. They're pretty basic, but go right along with. How can I now, yeah, this is different because I know there's lead pastors on here, and I know there are children's ministry pastors, and then there's the nursery worker volunteers. So you have to ask it of yourself, like, what is this? Hold on. Whatever your position is. How can we as nursery coordinators go out of our way to show appreciation to our nursery volunteers? Like, I purposefully have to go out of my way to let my volunteers know. But then how can we as pastors show appreciation to our nursery coordinator? So they have, the 5 love languages book. There's also one that's 5 love languages in the business realm as well. And that's really helpful. Obviously, if your nursery director is her love language is touch, send your wife over there to go and give her a big hug. Have your wife go give her a coffee if it's gifts. So those kinds of things. But you as the pastor, just the fact that my brother would walk into our nursery and say, every Sunday, Matt pops his head in. He never does anything for us. It's not like he's doing something, but every Sunday he pops his head in and he's like, can I do anything for you guys? Of course there's nothing. What is he going to do? He's not going to change a diaper, but he's like, can I do anything? He purposefully goes out of his way though and says, hey, can I help you? Hey, you guys are doing a great job. Thank you for doing this. So just little things like that. But there's been times when I'm in there just doing things like decorating or whatever, that he comes in and he's like, hey, what else do you need in here? What kind of funding do you need? What can I do to help? And he just comes and sits with me and says, what can I do personally to help get you onto the next step with this? So that's huge. Number 3, how can we assure that both our nursery volunteers and our nursery coordinators are fully trained, instead of just throwing in a woman who is, oh, she's pregnant, so let's throw her in the nursery. Those people really are the worst nursery people. No offense to any of them. I've had 4 kids, and that is the time I don't want to be in nursery. I'm like, I have 4 babies. I have the puke on me all the time. You are my break. So like personally, I don't even ask ladies to serve in nursery until their baby is 9 months old. Because by that time, the brains are so, the hormones are somewhat leveled out. They're not all, they're getting a little more sleep. So most people say, oh, if you're, if they're in nursery, if they have a kid in nursery, they need to be serving in nursery. And it's like, really, why are we having the nursery ministry? We're there, what is our purpose of this nursery ministry? So how can we assure that they're all trained though? Our volunteers need to know. We've added some, I think Kylie put in, I don't know how you get them, but there's some things that we've added. And if it wasn't added, I'm sorry, but you can ask me for it. But we have things that we have lined up showing, hey, when you're in nursery, this is in the toddler nursery, I make it optional. If you want to do story time and Bible time in the toddler class, or if you just want to make it animal cookies and water time and play time. So we make it optional for our leaders. But we have the step-by-step schedule if they want to follow it. So what can we do to assure that they're trained and that they know what to do? And the last one, what are ways we can provide desirable venue for both our nursery coordinators and our volunteers, that they all actually want to be in there? Like I said, for example, we made our nursery not look like a nursery. We made it look like a living room, a really cute living room, farmhouse feel. So then when the moms came, they wanted to actually walk in and serve instead of a Nickelodeon feel, because really the 1.5-year-old doesn't even know any of that stuff. So there's toys, but it's like, I'm going to a play date, the mom and their little kid going in play date and sitting with their other friend that's watching the kids in there. So that's the feel we were trying to get to make it a desirable venue for them.
All right, off to your rooms.
We can talk when we're ready. It's just a whole lot easier than to try to raise hands and wait for technology to work. But so feel free to unmute and we'll get started. I used to be in the nursery. I used to be a nursery worker back in the day when I was a teenager. I was allowed to work with my mom, and so that was very exciting. So anyway, anybody else have any nursery experience in here?
Every Sunday.
Who said every Sunday? Is that you, Luke?
Yeah, between kids and then trying to manage my kids and pastor's kids, it's always a juggle. So
Yep. Olivia, I saw your hand up. So are you a nursery coordinator?
No, I'm the kids ministry director, and so I
Okay.
do have a nursery coordinator under me.
Sure. Fun stuff. And then also I heard that Peter Ramirez is the nursery coordinator over there with Morris. And so good stuff. All right, well, let's get started with the first question. How can nursery coordinators go out of their way to show appreciation for volunteers? This is big. Go ahead, Adam. You can tee us off first, maybe.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is they got to communicate with each other. I know Charity mentioned that quite a bit. They're volunteers, and volunteers have got to make sure they're appreciated. Volunteers don't feel appreciated, then good luck keeping the volunteers. We want to keep them going, and we want to make sure that they know how much, when they're there once a month, twice a month, whatever the case is. We got to make sure that they feel the love from whoever the leaders are. So I think one of the biggest things is just communicating with them. And I love the idea of what Charity said of finding out what their favorite things are, things that they enjoy, and going out of the way to make sure the church as a whole is getting things to them to show that appreciation.
It's good. Yep, go ahead, Olivia.
For Mother's Day, my nursery coordinator actually brought in breakfast for all the volunteers. We struggled getting volunteers on that day, and so she was like, you know what, here you go, and brought it in, and they really felt appreciated and was very appreciative of the breakfast too.
That's awesome. Was that on a separate day, you said, or was that?
It was that was on Mother's Day. I've done it for Easter Sunday, so like special days, but she's kind of mentioned, hey, if someone wants to get on that rotation with me, I'll do it every week, type of thing. So
that's awesome. Cool. Who else?
I mean, we do those things. You can like getting different things for people, making sure they know that we're doing a cookout at one of our volunteers' houses. That'll be like an annual thing, just an appreciation for them. But honestly, I think all of these things are a little bit surface, man. I think long term, whoever's the leader needs to be actually developing like a real relationship with these people outside of just like, thank you for serving on Sunday. Like there needs to be like a friendship development or like a connectivity development, where like these people will be sustained in these ministries, for long term. And so I don't know the answer of how to do that other than like legitimately communicate with people, legitimately care, and like outside of the Sunday that they're serving, actually have conversations with them. You know what I mean? Like if we're not careful, we get so just laser focused on who's serving that day. And if you're on a monthly rotation, that means once a month, the director shows interest in you. The other 3 weeks, it's all wacky and crazy and you don't hear from them. So I think it's long term, it's like developing like real relationships with people, and then they'll go to the wall for you if you've developed those relationships. But if you've just given them a Twix bar, once every month or a couple months, it's like, okay, cool. Like, I mean, that's great. Like, I mean, I love to eat, of course. So I'm going to a Twix bar, but like, just sending a form out for me to say my favorite candy, Skittles, and bringing me Skittles, that's cool. But over time, I want something deeper.
It's good.
one of the things I'd say is when it comes to influence and leadership in a voluntary aspect, when you're working with volunteers in a workforce, I pay them, I can give them a raise, or I can fire them. In the nursery, you can't really do that. I'll triple the wages every Sunday. They'll still not make anything. It just doesn't work. And so you have to be able to influence them as an individual, and everybody needs communication differently. Some people need it direct. Some people need the pat on the back, right? So you have to understand you're working with different individuals, and you have to build that relationship with them as an individual even though you're still leading the nursery. And I'm sure that Olivia could give words to that. You're still, the nursery system's the same, the check in, check out, what has to happen, the safety procedures, but the individuals are all different in what they need when it comes to a relationship and the communication in and outside the nursery. So you know, some people need more, some people need flowers, some people need candy, some people just need that, hey, we've got your back, and some people don't want to be bothered. So, you know, balancing it out, leading them individually.
That's a great point, Luke. I love that different people need different things. And like, I think something, and I, as a lead pastor, who I'm not over this part of our church, so I'm looking at it from the 30,000-foot view. But like, I tell all of our ministry leaders, like, your volunteers, you should focus on your volunteers. So like, if you're a nursery director, kids director, whatever it is, you should spend a ton of your energy into your volunteers. It's not that I'm the kids director and so all of my energy is going to the kids. It's that I'm the director, so all of my energy, not all of it, but most of my energy is going into my volunteers. Because like Southwest Airlines, right? If their big thing is they want their employees to be happy, if their employees are happy, it's going to spill over into the people that fly on a plane.
Yeah, I'm not perfect at this by any stretch, but a lot of times what I'll do, I carry my phone obviously with me everywhere I go. So when I have personal conversations with those nursery volunteers or whoever's volunteered to cook a barbecue, as a pastor, I go around and I'll make myself a note on Monday, hey, write this person a personal letter, or make sure that and in that personal letter reference this exact conversation with this exact piece of information. So intentionally, not manipulatively, but intentionally saying, I remember you, I'm learning about who you are as an individual, as a volunteer. And yeah, those things are very important to do for sure. Who else? How can we go out of our way? Learn their names, obviously. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Hey, sorry. I would say, you know, like Luke was saying, there's different personalities that enjoy different things, but I've seen thank you cards, birthday cards go a long way. Just writing it directly from me and saying, hey, thank you for loving on our kids. Thank you for letting, watching the kids' babies so that the parents could go and enjoy the service without a you know, crying, screaming baby. And so I've seen it go a long way, and people will be like, thank you for my thank you card. And I'm like, what do I say to that? You know, but you know, the ones that appreciate those personal letters, I know who they are now because they've said to me, thank you for that card.
That's good. By the way, Breeze sends out a birthday and an anniversary thing automatically. You don't even have to think about it. It just triggers and goes. And the amount of feedback that I have from an automated email that I typed up over a year ago or 2 years ago, people respond, "Oh, thank you so much for remembering my birthday." Yeah, that's good. Very good, Olivia. Any other ideas? Walter, you're being quiet. Jason, anything?
I have no idea. I don't even have a nursery yet. We're not allowed to have nursery yet. So I'm all ears on this stuff.
Hey, good. You can start strong.
Yeah, I'm hot.
Walter, Beth, and Kylie, anything to add?
We have no nursery right now.
Yeah.
My wife is in the background saying, hey, iced coffee station in the morning, like something for the pick me up. And it, you know, obviously it's something special, but specifically for the nursery workers. And one of the things I was going to add is with the, you know, advent of social media becoming more and more in depth, obviously you don't want to take pictures of the kids and nursery workers with the kids, but just acknowledging the individuals that is their love language is recognition on Facebook. When you're saying, hey, someone, you know, saw this today, sometimes that's just, it goes a long way. And people, while it may not be the best, it's not their crown in heaven, but sometimes that gets them there the next Sunday because they remember that they were acknowledged publicly for something that they never thought about.
That's good.
Hey, Chris,
let's move on to, go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I add something, Chris, to that?
Absolutely, please.
One of the things, so yeah, we were closed as well in a way, but we're back indoors and all that. One of the things, my wife right now is heading this up. We're in a transition time. I'm going to delegate it out. But with this is having kind of like what Josh said, is having that personal touch. So my wife does those personal letters and has that personal touch with them. So I think that goes a long way. I think also, I'm just looking at it in two different ways. How do we recruit more helpers? So one of the ways is if I recognize them in front of the church, we have them up when we can, we do something. You can also use that. I think of Jason, right? You don't have nursery right now. Maybe that's a way to also recruit people, right? Hey, here's this need. This is a huge part, and then have them, then sign up for that. And obviously, you do background checks and all that. I mean, that's a given. But I think sometimes using that, I'm in the Silicon Valley, so anything you can implement videos or pictures or anything like that, I think is a great help. So I know you were going to transition, but I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's great. So basically you're saying give your nursery coordinator a brand new car and instantly you'll have plenty of nursery workers for
brand
life.
new Tesla. You've been in the Silicon Valley.
Yeah. All right, number 2. How can pastors show appreciation to our nursery coordinator? So we've already talked a little bit about that, but let's kind of dive a little bit deeper there. But how can pastors show appreciation for the nursery coordinator?
Chris,
number one is not just focusing on the negative, right? I mean, it's like sound men, they don't know, everybody only looks at them when the sound screws up. But I think like coordinators, it's not, for instance, today I was just talking with our children's director about our data, making sure we're getting the right kind of data and stuff. But that's not the only conversation that we've had this month about kids. It's not about like, hey, we need to shore up our data. We've talked 10 other times about ideas to do this and that. And like, it's been like 90% positive and like 10% of like, hey, we need to shore up this one little area. So I think, just paying attention to that stuff. Nobody wants to hear what they did wrong all the time.
Sure. Go ahead, Adam.
No, I was saying we just finished our building project last year. And so going from a older nursery that we had to a brand new building and everything, we've tried to go our way to go to the nursery director and our main nursery leaders and just saying, hey, how is everything adjusting for you? Is there anything that's missing? What is it that we can add? And just getting their input on, what they see. Because I know we're going to get to it on the last question here, but one of my jobs as the associate pastor is to make sure I'm asking the questions. Now, if you're going to come to me and ask me for advice when it comes to the nursery, you're asking the wrong person. But just that communication is key once again to say, hey, what is it that you're needing, especially in our situation with brand new stuff.
One of the things that we, because pastor, he's typically in the main service preaching and doing what he needs to do. So he doesn't get to see necessarily the functions of the nursery in full swing. And so we've realized if it's negative, we have myself and pastor's wife who are dealing with the logistics and the details. So if it's negative, it comes from us. If it's positive, it comes from pastor. Meaning that if we're going to make a change, like, hey, we say, hey, they need this resource or they need a new toy, whatever it is, that's a pastor thing. Like, hey, here, pastor's the one bringing the positive, and then those of us that are boots on the ground are bringing the negative. That way it's not only negative from pastor. There's a lot of positives, so the pastor has to get in the negative. It's just business. It's just process, if you would.
That's good. Yeah, one of the things that I try to do is I do a lot of email. So I like to do personal appreciation and recognition. And so instead of every time I see them, by the way, now that I've got you here, here's 5 things that I need you to accomplish. Hey, I love you. You're awesome. And then in my head, I'm going to make a mental note, send them an email about this, and then we can discuss it. Inevitably there's going to be questions on whatever you email them, or you'll put something in the email. You can even text them and say, hey, I emailed you. And so, but that way you're conducting business in a business realm, and it doesn't dominate every waking moment of your association with them. And so that way there's still that personal touch. Man, when they see you, they know it's probably not business. You're appreciating them. So yeah. Any other thoughts along those lines?
Because that is one of the least appreciated jobs. So
I would even add, as the church grows, we finally reached a point where the stress level on the nursery director was to a level that it's a part-time paid position. They're not going to get rich off of it. They can't pay their bills off of it, but it was just a level of appreciation that, hey, we know that this is a lot more than just a volunteer position, that you're having to put in a lot more. Our nursery director is probably putting in 10, 12 hours a week minimum. keeping everything staffed, and we only have Sunday services, but it's a lot to do. So maybe consider adding them to the church budget in a paid position.
Robbie, what size church is yours that you've made that decision? Just to give some of us smaller churches an idea of what.
Yeah, when we hit the 600 mark, is when we made that a part-time position. We're now, post-COVID, we're getting back over 1,000 again. So probably 15 years ago when we were in the 600 range, we really began to make that switch. And it was a gradual. It didn't start out at 10 hours, 12 hours a week pay. It's just as it's grown. But, I would say to evaluate how much you're having to. So we're reaching a lot of unchurched families. Charity spoke about that for a moment. Like Sunday morning in our second service, she had to deal with a very irate guest that did not like our processes and systems. And, that second service, she had over 40 in 0 to 3. And that just added a lot of stress. And so there comes a point where you just realize this is more than just a straight volunteer person can handle. The recognition of your value that you contribute is worth more than just volunteer. We're going to give you, a paycheck.
Okay, cool. That helps some of us out that are trying to head that direction. All right, question number 3 here. We got a few minutes left here. Let's talk about nursery training for our volunteers and coordinators. What are some things that you guys do? What are some things you wish that maybe you could do to help your nursery workers and your coordinator get the training that they need? Or do you just let them go? Here's the babies. Let's take
Just
care
let
of
them fend for themselves. We have a big kid ministry meeting every year, typically in January, but we had a staff change this year, so we moved it to August. But we just have a big luncheon type thing where we go over all the policies and procedures. We've had times where we've done breakout rooms that have different sessions that maybe it's one of them's a special needs session, just how to recognize things with those children, or safety, scheduling, curriculum planning, just different topics that we can go over with our volunteers for kids ministry in general. And then we just try to lead by example as much as possible.
Okay, good. All right, somebody else.
This
What do you do
goes
for
with
training?
the whole children's ministry as a whole, but developing, and this is a time-consuming, fully acknowledge up front, this is not something you're going to have in place Sunday. But we, a number of years ago, developed an entire personnel policy manual for volunteers that work in the children's ministry, from nursery age all the way to the 6th grade of the children's ministry. I think giving them the expectations, and that's part of the training, that they know what's expected of them. We don't do this for every worker, but we have lead workers in different areas of the nursery and children's ministry. They've all been CPR certified. Just God forbid, if there were ever a situation, having somebody that knows, certainly for your nursery director, to invest in infant CPR and what you would do, child CPR, what you would do in that situation, choking, how to handle, if they choke. Come to find out, it's best just not to toss them out to the curb. And so there is what to do with that. Those are some of the things that we've done. And if you want a copy of our our children's ministry manual, email me. I could get that for you in a digital format.
Okay, awesome. Can you put your email in the chat?
Yeah, I'll do that right now. Yep.
All right. Thank you very much. All right, we got a few seconds left before we leave. Anybody else have anything they want to add?
I'll just say real quick with training. One of the best things we did is we pair, new people up with people who have been in there for a while. And then we also give them an out. So, hey, why don't you take 2 or 3 weeks and be involved in this? And if you don't like it, then you're not plugged in for life for this. That's been helpful and people have appreciated that.
Yeah, I like.
All right. Hope everyone had a good roundtable. I'm going to highlight the leaders here, and we'll get some recaps going. One moment. Thomas, you want to go ahead and share with us some things from your roundtable?
Sure. So we were talking about showing appreciation for our workers. And one of the big things that kept sticking out is just that personal thanks, especially from a lead pastor, whether it is, I think Larry talked about stopping in the middle of the service, since he doesn't get up to the platform until he preaches. He popped in just to say, hey, thanks for working today and serving today. Or maybe on the way out, thanking the worker that day. Hey, I appreciate you. And then recognizing that person to the people who are standing around and saying, hey, have you met this person? Do you know they work in the nursery and what they're doing? And so having that personal thanks, writing handwritten notes and things like that was very good. And then as we closed out, we were talking about training a little bit. And one of the things Dennis talked about, I think it was Dennis, he talked about, I forget who it was, but he was talking about actually paying for like infant CPR and those sorts of things to make sure that people feel equipped if there is an emergency to be able to do that. And then having a clear manual that people know what the expectations are and having a time where you can go through that with them. So those are a couple of the highlights that we talked about.
Chris, Pastor Chris.
Yeah, so we dove in, and obviously the personal touch there was really big. And every time they see you, don't make it to be a negative thing when we show our appreciation. So sometimes you might be in person when you're showing your appreciation, and kind of take care of some of the negative via email or another way. So that way, every time they see you coming, they don't run and hide. But we also talked about sending a Twix bar to Josh Cox. He said large king size there. And but candy bars work, recognition of birthdays and anniversaries work for the send somebody that handwritten card, especially on their birthday and anniversary, goes a long way. And then Josh Cox brought up a really good point just a second ago on on being fully trained, on focusing on a church about 2 times larger than yourself, rather than focusing on a mega church for your size. As a smaller church, you can do some things that larger churches can't. And as a larger church, you can do some things that the smaller churches can't. And so focus on somebody where you're going and the direction you're going, so that way you can get a better idea of where to train. And then lastly was just refreshing the furniture and making it look pleasant, getting those comfy rocking chairs in there that everybody loves. And that's good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's really easy to assume that women, because we have children, or we've typically worked with children, that we must know already. We of course what to do in the nursery, but I think there's a lot of things that happen in nursery that aren't everyday things. Charity spoke on this, dealing with maybe a persistent and particular mother. How do you deal with that? That's interpersonal skills that you don't really have to deal with your own children at home. And so those kinds of training can be very, very helpful. Charity, you also led a roundtable. Do you want to give a recap? You're muted.
Okay, you can hear
Yes.
me now. All right, so we discussed about the training too. I forget who mentioned it, but the infant CPR and doing that, it actually brings in workers too, with people that weren't even working. But if you offer a training, a lot of people will come in, and that was a really good tip. Jerry said that making it smell nice. And that seems like, oh, duh, but it's really a big deal when you walk in and you're not like, oh, do I want to be in here for the next hour and a half? But purposefully making it smell nice. But there's the balance. When you worked in nursery, you have the mom that's like, don't use bleach or Clorox. Don't use essential oils. That doesn't clean anything. And you're like, okay, so what am I supposed to do? But making it smell nice, like somebody's home that is a clean person, that was big. And then for the desirable venue, to find an extreme couponer in your church, and that'll really help lessen the cost, or in your area, somebody that wants to donate, just putting it out there, because a lot of times, sometimes they don't like to tell you, because extreme couponers, we were talking earlier, how you kind of get a bad rap because it's like, what are you going to do with 84 mustards, but we've had at our church, we've had people bring in, this one lady brings in cases of Frappuccinos that she gets for free. And she brings in cases of chocolates and breakfast bars. And that's a ministry that she can do and be part of the nursery, but not actually be in nursery serving. So that was some of our takeaways.
Awesome. Thank you, Charity, for sharing everything. I know one thing you've mentioned before too, I think maybe on your radio program, or I think it was on the Idea Talks podcast, you had mentioned how not everyone is for the nursery. There's some people who they're not good for the nursery's not good for them. And, getting everyone in the right seat of the bus. Not every lady is right for the nursery. But just like that, maybe this coupon lady, she's obviously contributing, and there's some really great places, a right seat on the bus that you can find for those type of people. So not just assuming that every lady is perfect for the nursery. So I just have a few things I want to touch on before we go. So next week is the last week of May. We will be talking on mentoring the next generation. That'll be with Josh Tice. He has a very strong heart for mentorship in general, but specifically on the next generation, because that is the future of the church. And so he'll be speaking on that. It'll be the last session in this module of next gen ministry. And then we're in June already, if you can believe that. I can't. We'll be in June already, and the topic there is worship services. Now we're going to be talking about the worship service as a whole. So creating great first impressions with Josh Ermler, dynamic service programs, Jason Combs, so the overall program. Worship music, Carrie Schmidt will be leading that, so he'll be joining us that week on the roundtable. Preaching, I'm not even going to try to say this word. Maybe I should. Exegety. I'm sure I butchered that. You all probably know what that is. Okay, the text while exposing the gospel. Okay, that's with Kurt Skelly. You can all correct my pronunciation later. And then the last one, connecting with your audience with Josh Tice. Also next, thank you, Chris. How did you do that? You have like a little emoji. That's hilarious. So next week, we're also going to be trying, wow, everyone's jumping on. How are you doing that? Anyway, someone unmute yourself and tell me how to say this word.
Exegetically?
Well, if you look on the note, it's Exegete.
Exegete.
Exegete the text while exposing the gospel. That is okay. You all know what that means. This is why I just run logistics. So next week we're going to be trying something new. It's the last week of May, and we're actually going to be separating everyone into permanent groups, and you'll stay in that group for the month. So next week we'll do a trial run of that, and then starting in June you'll have kind of a small group in a way within the roundtable, and you'll stay with the same moderator for the whole month. And so we believe this will be a really great way kind of like the room calls that you just did, you guys will get to know each other week by week. And because the conversation will build on itself with the worship service topic throughout the month. So you'll stay with the same group and you'll stay with the same moderator. And we're really praying that that will help just bring even more synergy and help you guys get to know each other. And so we'll do kind of a trial run next week with that. And then starting June, we'll kind of kick that off. I did want to mention just two things. So once we get into the rooms, at that point, if you're not in the meeting at that point, when we break out into the rooms, we really can't let you in at that point because me as the host, I have to leave the room to let you in, which totally kind of butchers the recording for those who have to watch it later. So if you haven't joined the roundtable by the time we break out into breakout rooms, then you've just kind of missed that week. And you can watch the replay later. So even unfortunately, I know it's unfortunate, but if by chance you get kicked out and you can't get back in without me letting you back in, unfortunately, I won't be able to let you back in anymore, just so we can keep the replay recording more consistent for those who watch it every week. And then if you can, while you're in the roundtables, turn on your mic, turn on your camera as well. I know some, maybe you're driving or you're not really able to be a part and you're just more listening to it live. That's totally fine if that's you. You don't have to turn on your camera and your mic. But if you are able to, we really would love for everyone to be a part of that. You'll see me pop in and out of the rooms. I'm there because the recording follows wherever I am, but you can ignore me and turn on your own camera and mic if you can. We really want to encourage everyone to have a part and share your ideas as well. So that's all we have for this week. Really looking forward to next week and then our new module in June. Thank you all for coming. Have a great week and we'll see you next week.